Today I wanted to talk about the tradition of jisei, writing a poem before death. The Japanese have always had an interesting relationship with death. With a belief in mainly Buddhist principles with a mix of Shintoism, Japanese death poems emphasize the transience and dreamlike quality of life, and hope for enlightenment and freedom from suffering. What's interesting is that the Japanese never get too abstract with their poetry, and always return to the natural world around them to represent these beliefs about the true nature of reality. A collage of someone's entire life and death being captured by a piece of snow melting off a mountain, or a dewdrop hanging off a leaf, facing death itself, yet composing a poem about how the moon looks today. The Japanese truly tried to take life for what it was, and always looked to their beautiful surroundings when even trying to describe the loftiest and most spiritually esoteric of ideas. It may be surprising for some of you that this culture is responsible for more than just animated shows about 12-year-olds killing gods with friendship. But actually, there is a massive tradition of Buddhist belief and literary accomplishment that spread from China in the 6th century and has influenced Japanese culture since then. Japan's preoccupation with death starts from local Shinto belief before Buddhism had reached its shores, when it was thought that when you died you turned into some sort of spirit who hung around. Basically, when you died, you got to be worshipped by your family for generations to come, for good luck. You get to stick around and perpetually judge your family for the low-quality casserole they make. All things considered, a pretty good deal. But one day, these guys with shaved heads and saffron robes came and said, "Actually, you just die, dumbasses." And so everyone started freaking out and writing poems. Okay, not really. But once these beliefs started to spread, religiously and poetically, transience, freedom from illusion, seeing life for what it was directly with no conceptions to cloud you. Once those became the norm, especially with literate people, basically Zen Buddhism. Of course, Pure Land Buddhism was actually more popular with regular peasant people in Japan, but that would take too long to explain. Some examples of death poems. Blow if you will, fall wind. The flowers have all faded. Now as a spirit I shall roam the summer field. A broken dream. Where do they go? The butterflies. This last one in particular is pretty interesting because it relates to a very popular account of a Chinese philosopher, Zhuangzi, who dreamed one night that he was a butterfly, content and flying where he pleased, completely forgetting he was Zhuangzi. He woke up, remembered who he was, and asked if he was a butterfly in Zhuangzi's dream or Zhuangzi in the dream of a butterfly. The broken dream is the illusion which is this transient world which we live in. The dream of our own individual existence. Who we are is broken with death. What comes after, no one knows. Will it be another dream? Will we find out that we are actually a butterfly? The beauty is that the Japanese don't try to find out, for that would be useless and impossible. Instead, they accept the reality of death and the end of the dream. Many of these poems point towards the changing seasons as a naturalistic example of what death is. Instead of contemplating rotting corpses as the Indian Buddhists do, they use images of flowers and movement to consider what death might mean. Many of these poems have been recorded in the past centuries by Japanese people of various backgrounds. Some were monks who contemplated emptiness and non-self at their death. Some were samurai who pondered loyalty to their daimyo or the state at death. Others were haiku poets who considered the transience of their lives. Some were even made by suicide bombers before their planes crashed during World War II. A few Zen monks actually made fun of the tradition, questioning what was the purpose of writing a death poem about non-self or transience when you were going to die anyway. They also derided those who spent years trying to compose a fitting death poem before they died, and then acting like they came up with it on the spot. One monk, when asked to write one as he was dying, just drew a circle in black ink. Another only wrote the character for dream. Shozen, a samurai warrior in the 17th century who became a monk later on, criticized organized religion and those who would turn Buddhism into an abstract doctrine instead of a way of life. When asked by a disciple to give his last words as he lay dying, he rebuked him sharply, saying, "You only show that you don't understand. Like this, I simply die. What's interesting is that the tradition of death poetry never really died out in Japan, with some still deciding to leave a memento of their passing. A popular example in the modern age is the post-World War II Japanese author Yukio Mishima, who was almost nominated for a Nobel Prize in Literature for his writings and is considered one of the most important writers of the 20th century. A massive traditionalist as well, he built a small private army and held an official hostage and requested that the emperor be reinstated. This was of course a ridiculous request in 1970, and Mishima, who idolized the samurai warrior spirit and the beauty of a youthful death, committed ritual suicide shortly after his demands were denied and scoffed at. He left this traditional haiku poem: "A night storm sighs. The fate of the flower is to fall, rebuking all who hesitate."